Welcome back. I'm Tyler, you're watching Scarfing Scarves, and this is not an installment of last week Lolita news because the holidays are upon us, and apparently the only thing a lot of you can get salty about revolves around someone trying to upend the sacred bounds of this fashion by styling a skater dress as if it was Lolita, and not the laziest nod to femininity the world has ever seen. Everyone has already said their piece on this, head desking abounds, and given that the last thing this channel unleashed upon the community was essentially an asteroid of untempered salt encrusted with spite, I thought it might be nice to take a short detour from the usual battery acid and shrieking to delve into something that doesn't make you want to Control-Alt-Delete the entire species. The previous was verbosity, for I'm going to try to be positive for once, and your regular programming of pastel hostility will return post the season of giving gifts to family members in the vain hope that it will make up for not speaking to them the other 364 days of the year. This will only reveal how little you truly know about them, mind you. They will put it on eBay. May I suggest giving them cash and skipping the step where they smile congenially while pondering if it would be more fun to sell it or shoot at it until they've worked out their holiday stress. My family likes to use recreational explosives. For all I know, half of my gifts are buried in a hillside with some suspicious looking holes. Gift cards, people. You are not an omniscient narrator, and Great Grandma B is too nice to tell you that you have the aesthetic taste of a swarm of bees. Getting a little off track, but it's either cash or kaboom. Anyway, this video is supposed to be about gratitude, something I have more to share with you than any salty reporter should be entitled to, and I apologize in advance for any ensuing nausea. Welcome to EGL MVPs. First award for Most Valued Player in EGL goes to sock glue. Better known as roll-on body adhesive, or that thing river dancers use to look slightly less stupid while they perfect their two-legged antelope impression, sock glue is the only thing that separates the Lolita community from looking like they're searching for spare change, losing a head bow in the process, and Satan willing, traumatizing several small children when the bobby pins give way and their wig goes flying onto the ground below. All it takes is a little glue, garters are for hussies, and real Lolitas know that the only thing you should bend over for is your computer so you can snipe Karen's dream dress out of spite. Karen had it coming, spill tea on my DDC, and I'll knock a bitch into the next county. Wear it to the next meetup she's going to for extra points, and moving right along. EGL MVP number 2, people who tie your waist ties at meetups. A nod to the Lolita pit crew in general at every social gathering, these ladies earn their MVP status the very moment they take what appears to be a strangely lumpy knot and rearrange it as if it wasn't originally tied by a glaucoma-stricken walrus. Tying waist ties behind my back is not a skill I possess. It always ends in the approximation of a shoelace, and given that these women seem to be in every comm I've visited up till now, I'd say the tiers of waist ties deserve our support as they go about delicately fixing our fuck-ups before we bring the fashion down by several degrees. Nothing says fully functioning responsible adult quite like walking about like a toddler that can't tie their own shoes, and I know I owe most of my dignity to people too nice to let me wander about until my waist ties get stuck in a door. You guys are definitely a pillar of Lolita fashion, and speaking of pillars, EGL MVP number 3, Lovely Lor. I was fortunate enough to meet her at OniCon, a Galveston, Texas-based convention with awesome Lolita fashion programming, and collaborating with her to do a live improvised roast and toast of prints and coordinates over the weekend is something I'll remember for a long time. Is exactly what I would say if there wasn't a giant blank space in my memory where my soul left my body. I am not a stand-up comedian, and people looking at me while I say heinous things makes my brain reboot. Luckily, and or unfortunately, there is video evidence of what happens when I'm having to pull words out of my petticoat. 2 videos, in fact, and I would definitely recommend watching both of those if you'd like to know what my face looks like when I'm actively dying inside. Either way, her content is always a nice break from my unrepentant bitterness, and if you'd like to spare yourselves the caustic acidity of the last video LWLN put out, you can find relief in a channel so sparkly sweet you could get a corneal cavity just from looking at it. Disturbing image, I know, but I meant it in a good way. While we're on the topic, EGL MVP number 4, Paradiso. A 2-day J-Fashion Gala in Kansas City, Missouri to be held May 25th and 26th of 2019, Paradiso provides a J-Fashion/EGL specific experience that is hard to come by in a world full of multi-purpose anime conventions. Of course, my interest in putting them on the MVP list is purely selfish. I have ulterior motives, and those motives are, holy fuck waffles, angelic pretty San Francisco is coming to Paradiso, and I will not chill until May of 2019. They will be setting up a pop-up shop and the fact that I will be guest judging at the very same convention as my favorite brand in the entire world makes me want to lose my ish at the nearest unfortunate pedestrian. The neighbors have already called the cops on me twice, half the neighborhood no longer walks their dogs past my house, I cannot afford to go to jail again. Because you do not understand. This is my dream. I have never bought Angelic Pretty in person. I have always wanted to, and that is now a thing I will get to do. I know most people are satisfied with shopping online and having it shipped to your door like a normal person, but I don't think there's anything quite like running up to a dress, screaming mine, and dragging the carcass to the counter to confront the disturbed faces of the shop girls directly as you hand over your debit card to confirm the kill. I may look relatively composed on the outside, but the inside of my head will essentially be a rotating circus of panic shrieking until further notice. Shifting towards our next contender, EGL MVP number 5, our local communities. As someone who was a lone Lolita for some years before I moved from an area that had more cows than people, I know I can say with confidence that my local community has made wearing this fashion even more fantastic. Having a community provides even more excuses to suit up in the form of meetups. You get to see so many dresses you might only have seen online, and the feeling of taking over a sidewalk like a flock of frilly geese is not to be underestimated. The vibrance of a gathering of mutually passionate EGL enthusiasts is not to be understated, and while it won't stop some random frackwit from telling you it's not Halloween on the street, it will provide some catharsis when 20 of the best dressed women you've ever seen communally drop pretenses and proceed to tell him where he can stick his excuse for a prick. You'd be surprised at the destinations they come up with, pretty sure he'd have to take out a few ribs to proceed, and finally, that brings us to EGL MVP number 6, and our final contender, all of you out there right now. I'd like to take a moment to drop the shtick, and for a brief summary, I'll catch you up on what I mean. While 2019 beckons in front of us, LWLN is poised to go to Canada, and I've been driving my ass all over the state of Texas. The start of 2018 was a little different. To understand that, we'll first have to run through the last half of December 2017. I'll try to make it quick. Last year, 2017, I called out a much larger YouTuber for working with a man with multiple allegations of sexual harassment and questionable business practices. The even larger channel that the YouTuber worked for filed multiple fraudulent copyright strikes against my videos to get them taken down, resulting in 2 copyright strikes against my account, with one more meaning YouTube would take away my channel. Then, January 5th, 2018, the man, who happened to own one of the biggest anime conventions in the country, threatened to sue me if I didn't both take the videos down and make a public apology. So I began the year on the verge of losing my channel and facing the prospect of financial ruin from a lawsuit I couldn't afford to fight. At the time, I tried really hard not to make it about me, because in reality, it was about the victims of this man and their stories. Talking about myself would have felt selfish, and I didn't want to shift the focus from the victims to me. Now that a year has passed, I feel like it's okay to tell my part of the story, and that it won't overshadow the stories of the women affected by this man. If anyone wants the full story, I posted links in the description. Long story short, I did not take the videos down, I did not apologize, and because the community rallied around me, public pressure forced them to withdraw all pending legal action, and my videos were restored. Since then, so many people have come up to me to tell me how brave they felt I was, and thanked me for everything I did, which is jarring, because during it all, I went out of my way not to make it about me, because it wasn't about me. And because of that, I never told anyone how hard it was, because it was hard, and it was scary. There was an entire month between them threatening to sue me and ultimately rescinding that threat. It was an entire month where I couldn't eat, I slept in shifts, and I spent that time that I was awake physically shaking, and it's followed me. To think of it today, I still shake. And it makes me angry that it still has this effect on me, that even writing this script took me back to that place, and I still physically shook. While I was dealing with this stress, I went to a family member who's a very successful lawyer to ask their advice. And they scared the shit out of me. They told me to roll over, apologize, and take the videos down. Not because they thought I was wrong, but because they said this guy could drain me financially by taking me to court, drag it out for years, and ultimately follow me for the rest of my life. to the extent that the person I love and I could never get married because the financial trouble would haunt them too. I went to this friend of mine for some peace of mind, and instead I left with the assurance that this lawsuit could ruin my life. It was a lot. And as I was contending with that, my stomach churning and the shaking worse than before, the YouTuber and the man had the gall to call me a cyberbully. The YouTuber made a video about how depressed she was because she'd gotten nasty messages, while she and the convention owner classed themselves as the victims in this story. I had 6,000 subscribers. The other YouTuber had over 40,000 and worked for a large channel with nearly 150,000, and the man owned one of the largest anime conventions in the country. I was a gnat fighting a titan, and they had the nerve to call me a bully, while they were trying to intimidate me into silence, to directly threaten me until I stopped talking. And it almost worked. I couldn't defend myself on YouTube because of the copyright strikes, and I didn't want to shift the focus to myself. And so I never addressed the accusations of cyberbullying. And that's where you guys came in. Because you became the voice that I didn't have. The reason you guys are the MVP is that whenever someone comes up to me and thanks me for what I've done, I always tell them it was you guys standing up when I no longer could that made the difference. It was your posts and articles and videos and movement that made them back down. At the time, I felt like a nobody. I never expected the community to rally around me the way it did. I want to thank each and every one of you who spoke out during that time, to the people who sent me messages, left comments, and spent their time trying to help a tiny pile of salt. You guys made sure that the stories of the women weren't buried, and that the people who tried to strong-arm our community didn't get their way. And so, as 2018 began, so it ends, with the same gratitude I felt for all of you back then. Thank you. Finally, as the story did ultimately have a happy ending, to lighten things up a bit, on the recommendation of one of my commenters all those months ago, I framed the cease and desist letter, and it sits on my nightstand to this day. It stands as a sort of twisted trophy, and it matches the decor quite nicely, if I do say so myself. Meanwhile, as if the universe knew that this video was about to be made, recently, after I left a meetup to go to the mall in full Lolita, I was in a shoe store searching for my grandmother's Christmas present when I felt a tap on my shoulder. I turned around to see a man standing behind me, and thinking he'd ask, "What's the occasion?" or "Are you in a play?" I braced myself for the usual questions. What I was not prepared for was for him to ask, "Are you Kathy Cat?" And I said, "No, I'm the one she tried to sue." The look on his face is something I'll remember for the rest of my life. Like a surprised possum right after you'd slapped it with a fish for rooting through your bins. That's all the time we have for tonight. Thank you for watching Last Week Lolita News, and be sure to tune in next week when we tackle the tough questions like, why did you watch this? What could you have done with your time if it wasn't wasted on some uncharacteristically sappy prat? And will there be a smoke signal when Scarfing Scarves is funny again? Or are you stuck with uninspired sincerity until the world ceases to spin? More on whether or not I've had a change of heart and decided to take on a conscience. Spoiler alert, the answer is no. Next time on Last Week Lolita News. This has been Tyler, you've been watching Scarfing Scarves, and before you go hit the alcohol so hard you pickle your liver, you should know that this show is sponsored in part by Lolita Des, a secondhand Lolita and J-fashion shop based in Japan with excellent English-speaking staff and an official sponsor for Last Week Lolita News. Lolita Des, when a supposedly salty reporter goes sappy, nothing is funny anymore, and you're 2 seconds from writing her off as a turncoat for the sarcastic. Buying brand dulls the betrayal. They have it in spades. Link to their shop below, and to wrap things up with a big fracking bow, I'd like to thank my patrons for having stuck with this channel longer than would be recommended by most personal practitioners. The salt levels alone are just under the lethal limit, and should you have no care for your personal well-being, somehow skipped my being about as funny as a funeral parlor, or feel like supporting the ill-advised hurricane of verbosity this channel represents, then head over to patreon.com/lastweeklolitanews for more content on the long-winded spectrum. I promise you'll infinitely regret your decision. Merry Christmas to you all. Thanks again, guys, and I'll catch you next time.